Our scripture reading today is from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verses 11 through 14. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. In those days when you pray, I will listen. If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. I will be found by you, says the Lord. I will end your captivity and restore your fortunes. I will gather you out of the nations where I sent you and will bring you home again to your land.
Good morning. We are going to quickly watch our Habitat video and let you have a little taste of what our trip was like this year in pictures. And then the youth are going to get up and share. Some of the sponsors are going to share, and I'm going to share a message for you today about our trip and just about our mission. Are you ready? Ross said to give him a minute, so I was filling time.
Standing in a place where doubt and faith collide, staring in the face of fear that has to die. When you call my name, there's only one reply. No, I won't wait, I'll give you my whole life. I will go where you send me, to the ends of the earth. Just say the word and I'll go. longer found in shame. Here we are now, children of the mighty God. We have been marked by grace. We have been called by name. Here we are now, children of the mighty God. A mighty God. I belong to God. I belong to Jesus. Saved by your power and bought with your blood. I'll say to the darkness, you do not own me anymore. Oh, I belong to God. Whoa, I belong to God. We look upon your scars. We see a God who heals. Here we are now, children of the mighty God. Written in red for us, your everlasting love. Here we are now, children of the mighty God. You're a mighty God. I belong to God. I belong to Jesus. Saved by your power and bought with your blood. I'll say to the darkness, you do not own me anymore. Oh, I belong to God. Oh, I belong to God. I am defined by your heart for me. I am defined by the power of your cross. I'm so alive with your life in me. And now everything within me knows that I belong to God. I belong to God. I belong to Jesus. Saved by your power and bought with your blood. I'll say to the darkness, you do not own me anymore. Oh, I belong to God. I belong to God. I belong to Jesus. Saved by your power and bought with your blood. I'll say to the darkness, you do not own me anymore. Oh, I belong to God. Oh, I belong to God. Oh, I belong to God.
Have to make room. We have a lot of people. Would you guys all come up? My name is Angela Burrows, and I had to count last night. This is Habitat trip number 19 for me.
My name's Colton Williamson, and this is my second trip.
My name is Matt Miles, and this is my second trip.
My name is David Cisco. This is my second trip as a sponsor.
My name is Haley Horn, and this was my second trip.
My name is Samantha Cisco, and this is my second trip.
My name is Holly Turner, and this was my second trip.
My name is Lauren Newton, and this is my first trip.
My name is Kim Turner. Hello. This is my first week-long trip as a sponsor. I got to pop in last year just for one night to cook and to talk to the kids, but this was my first full week, and I survived it.
If you don't have a story. Sorry, Alan, I don't think Alan didn't get the memo. And that's just Habitat. Sometimes we make a plan and the plan changes just at the last second.
Okay. So one of the things I thought was like just really touching on the first, this last Habitat trip was out of the blue, we were invited to come sing at a shelter, you know, like they were feeding them and stuff. Yeah, I'm bad at this. The whole time they kept pressuring me to go up and sing a solo for everyone. And, you know, we sang a bunch of songs, and near the end, they finally convinced me to do it. And I got up there and just like, you know, sung the solo. And even though I messed up, they like just seeing the look on their face and how like happy they were. You know, just like it really like set the whole tone for the whole trip, you know, of helping others.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the homeless shelter as well. So when Angela told us, you know, that we were going to go serve there, we're like, oh, okay, that's cool. But then she's like, we're going to sing. We're like, oh, okay. And so we're like, okay, let's gather up some songs and everything. And so we did, and we just did some praise songs, and then we did some songs we did in choir and everything. So we go and we sing, and they absolutely loved it. Like the looks on their faces, like, and they knew some of the songs we sang, and they would like sing along, and they'd clap, and you know they'd like worship and put their hands in the air. And it was, I don't know, it was just kind of like, it was really touching and life-changing. I think that was probably my favorite part of the trip. And we talked about this on Wednesday. How, you know, kids can go to church camp or like CIY, or, you know, they can do a ton of other things during the summer to strengthen their relationship with God. But like with Habitat, you're actually like, you know, you're doing what Jesus would have done. You're being the hands and the feet of God. And that's something that, I don't know, it's really neat, and every Christian, I don't know, should experience it. So, yeah. Habitat definitely has its ups and downs and crazy twists throughout. I want to say it was the first night we got there, we didn't have a place to stay. And for Angela, that was kind of throwing everything off course, and we were kind of a little freaked out. But we made one phone call home, and this church put together the funds to put us up in a hotel for a night. And that's amazing to have a church family that can do that for your youth when we don't have a place to stay, because it kind of threw us off course for a little bit, and we were like, where are we going to stay tonight, you know? And it was scary, but to have a church family that can put together those funds and give us a place to stay, that's amazing. And so thank you to anybody who contributed to that. Also, Kim every night helped us cook dinner, and she was like multiple times called the super mom of the trip because she's amazing. So thank you for attending this trip with us, because I love spending time with you, and having her there every night was just great, because every time in the kitchen, it was always fun. It was always great, and the meals were amazing. Also, thank you to Angela, because it's a lot of stress, and it takes organization skills, and so thank you.
Yes, let's just say that Angela's forte is definitely organization. She has some amazing organizational skills and bordering on OCD, and if it wasn't for that, it would be extremely difficult. So she was an amazing, and the sponsors were so great this year. We had David Cisco that went, who had some mad packing skills for the van. Would highly recommend him for anybody to do that. Jenny Gaines, she was just a joy to have around. Her quiet strength, and she has this sharp wit, and she just relates so well to everybody. So it was a real blessing. And Ryan Kemp, he's just Ryan, and it was a blessing to have him there too, so he kept us all going. I will tell you, since this was the first week I went as a sponsor, I was a bit nervous on how I was going to keep up with these kids, and because my energy level isn't what it used to be. So I will just say that these kids have a way of bleeding their energy level and their desire to do good into you, and that uplifts you throughout the week. You should all be so proud to have these kids represent our church. If they are your child, amazing jobs. I have rarely, if ever, seen the work ethic that I've seen in these kids anyplace else. They were always right there to do any job that you needed. If I needed help, I didn't even have to ask. I mean, there was usually somebody there to do it. But they were there working day in, day out. Sometimes the circumstances were not great. And they were just somebody that a group of kids I really developed a lot of respect for. And you should be so proud that they are representing us. And thank you for your support. I do want to also say that if there's another adult here that would consider doing this in the future, it would be such a blessing to you to be able to go on a group like this and to go out and to reach the community and levels that we don't get to do around here as often, and not in the depth that we were able to reach other people when we were on the road. There were dozens of people that would stop us as a group in the grocery store, in the libraries, in the convenience stores where we stopped to go to the bathroom on the trips on the way down. Our kids were always respectful, and they were always interested to talk to other people about what they were doing and where they were going. And so many times these conversations came back, from the other people that we were talking to about, how those types of things had impacted their life, how they were part of a Habitat group, how they were working, with other people that, were in those situations and saw the benefit that we were trying to exude. So I just want to say, how proud I am and honored to be with this group of kids, and encourage anybody who might have an inkling to think that they can maybe do it, even if you're, not sure you can keep up. These kids will help you do it. So.
I had a fear that my notes would disappear, so success, we're here. Do you have that song? Thank you, there you go. I was listening to the radio when we came back from Habitat, and I always have my ears open for a song that would have to do with the trip or makes me think of the trip. And this song popped on the radio, and I started listening to it, and I wrote it down somewhere in my phone. Thought, I really need to use this, and that was about 2 months ago. And then this last week and the week before, I started getting a little more serious about getting a video together, and I pulled that song up and started listening to it so much. It really sums up the trip, because you are asked to do so many things when you go on a mission trip that you're not asked to do at home. One of the things I was asked to do was find a place for us to stay at the last minute when we're there with the 3 vans full of people. The Habitat organization had a place for us to stay. They were ready. They had a 6-bedroom home that I had looked at on Google Earth 100 times and thought, surely we can do this. I think we can do this. The bedrooms were big. Groups of 30 had stayed there before. And then we get there, and we find out the lady that had made these arrangements for us had quit 2 weeks before, possibly knowing we were coming. And the lady that took over hadn't even been out there to look at the house. Well, it was only 5 bedrooms. The kitchen, living room, dining room area was smaller probably than the small side of our CYF room, and that's where 27 people were supposed to be for a week, with 2 bathrooms. Although we had an option of a 3rd bathroom because Jim Hall helped us hook up. We were going to have an outside shower complete with curtain, and we had a plan for that. We always have a plan. But anyway, we got to this house, and Ryan Kemp and I were even going, well, how can we make this work for a night? We were going to try to figure it out. But some of the kids said, we passed a church. So what happened was I took 2 of the youth. Kim stayed behind and tried to prod the poor little newly employed Habitat coordinator into finding us someplace else to stay. I thought she was going to cry. I felt kind of bad for that. She was like a college student. Not that we were mean to her, but she was faced with, 27 people and no place for them to go for the night. So Haley, sister's name, Haley and Sarah and I went for a drive to a church that we had passed along the way to see if we could just stay there for the night. And we get to the church, pull in the parking lot. It's pretty empty, even though it's a Sunday evening. There's no one there. We're walking around, and I know they're a little nervous. They're a little anxious. I know a lot of the youth were a little nervous and anxious, and Kim, I think, was thinking we'd lost our minds at that point. Ryan was still trying to figure out how we could fit 27 people on 5-bedroom floors. And Dave had discovered a hornet's nest in the hydrant on the outside of the home. So everybody's a little understandably anxious. And I'm walking around the parking lot of that church. We were going door to door. There were no one was answering. And I talked to God a lot, but at that moment, my words were, we could use a little help. We could use a little help here. That was, I had faith something was going to work out, but it was kind of that, maybe you could make it work out right now. That would be great. So 5 minutes later, we're back at the house because I couldn't make anything work out at the empty church. And Kim says she'd talk to people back home. We had a hotel room. She had reservations by the time we got back. I think those reservations were probably being made about the time I had prayed, we could use a little bit of help right here. So something to remember. A lot of times I feel as if I'm hearing kind of a little voice in my head that says, don't worry, I'm still here. And that was one of those moments. God is going to make it work. It may not be what we've planned on that particular moment on the trip. I was on plan C, D, E, F. What could work out here? We were going to call Buzz Bush because we knew he knew somebody in Florida or in Alabama. We were going to make this work. And I get back and I find out God already had a plan A. It just had to happen in his time. And the other thing, God's plan is always better. Something that's a quote that I really like is Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. And that is Habitat quite often. We don't have to know how it ends. We just have to be willing to take a step and then take another step. It's kind of like driving in the fog. You can go slow, but you need to keep moving. We had the opportunity to serve at the homeless shelter, but she kept telling the lady that was working with us was through the church where we wound up staying, which turned out to be 10 times better than the original plan. But she was telling us about a homeless shelter. It was for women. A lot of the women had had really awful things happen in their lives. Many of them were mentally ill, abuse situations. Some of them were in hiding. That's why the pictures you saw were only of our kids, because there were some of them, their faces cannot ever go out where anybody could find them. She said, really, we don't want to overwhelm them, maybe 5 volunteers. Come feed them. And I'm thinking, that's good, and I want 5 people to have that experience, but I'd like 25 people to be able to help as well. And I always kind of hate to split the group up. So I asked her one more time, are you sure there's nothing else the entire group can do? And this is Thursday morning. And she made the joke. She said, well, unless you can sing and dance, we just don't have anything. I said, well, we can sing. So, and she kind of stopped. She said, could you really? I said, of course. We sing all the time. We can sing. We have someone who plays guitar. He didn't know he'd been volunteered to do that. I said, and she said, well, that's great. Show up at this time. I said, how many songs? You know, 1? She goes, oh, no, gosh, 5, 6, whatever you can come up with. Okay, sure, no problem. Hung up the phone, walked back into our group and said, hey, guess what? We're going to go sing tonight. We're going to pick out 5 or 6 songs and sing them at a homeless shelter. And after kind of a hesitation, mostly from Dave, who thought I'd lost my mind, they said, okay, and I think they had a praise book or maybe my song book, something. They're sitting in the floor of the house where we're working. They figured out some songs. They figured out, Mrs. Locke gave them some suggestions via text through me. Did a wonderful job. And towards the end of the singing that evening, I don't remember this being planned because it was completely a cappella. The women had all been singing along, and in the women in the shelter, very receptive. Well, towards the end of the set, of your set that you did, somebody said, hey, let's sing Lean On Me. We haven't done that in a long time, but they used to do it in choir. This group started singing, was it Stefan? Started singing Lean On Me. All the women joined in, and that's the point where I don't usually lose it, but I just about lost it because they'd had a rough week too. They'd had some things back home that had happened that were affecting us there. We'd just lost Joe Pat that day. And they're singing Lean On Me. The women in the homeless shelter are singing Lean on Me. And you could really feel God's presence right there in that moment. So whenever you don't see how something is going to end, it's okay to take the first step and say, sure, we can sing at your homeless shelter this evening, no problem, we'll take care of it. The second song that was on the video, I heard on the radio a long time ago, really like that song where they're saying, I belong to God, and that's something we try to remember on this trip. Sometimes we feel very insignificant, and sometimes we feel like we're not making a contribution, but the most important thing is to remember, we belong to God. We are God's children. We are God. He's in us and working through us, and you can really feel it on these trips. Everything you're doing, your work, God is working through you. It's also important to remember that everyone you meet is a child of God. Even the grouchy construction manager who the first day, my kids, several of them in particular, we hate him. He's the meanest guy in the world. I can't stand him. I think if they could have fired him, they would have. And I kept saying, give him a chance. Just give him a chance. You guys are a lot to deal with all at one time. Just give him a chance. By the end of day 3, middle of day 3, I think they wanted him to come to the beach with us. And by the end of Friday, they wanted him to come back with us. Really made a connection with him. But we just had to remember that even though he was grouchy and seemed mean, he is also a child of God and had wonderful things to say about our group. Isaiah 43:1 says, I've called you by name and you are mine. And that's a verse that we've talked about before. Just to remember who you belong to. There is a movie that we watched a while back in youth group a few years ago called To Save a Life, and many of you have probably heard about that movie. Great movie, very inspirational. Takes place in a high school, in a youth group, bunch of teenagers, and the youth pastor in that movie has a little speech that he gives, and I'm going to end what I'm saying with his words, not my own. He says, life is a journey, not so much to a destination, but a transformation. And transformation is tough, and we don't always end up where we think we will. That's Habitat. But we have to remember that even when we struggle to believe in him, he always believes in us. He fills our lives with purpose and passion if we just let him. And the best part of the journey is that God, the God of the universe, sometimes allows us to play a part in changing the world. And the other quote that I say in youth group, we talk about, I've said it many times, is the hero of the movie says, what good is all this if you're not going to let it change you? And that's something we have to remember. What good is this? What good is this volunteering for 9 days, giving ourselves if we aren't going to let it change our hearts? And that goes for us adults too. Loving God and loving others should transform us, and it should take us out of our comfort zone. And showing others God's love may take us way out of our comfort zone sometimes, but it's worth it, and you have to trust in him if you want to change the world. And I believe at this time,